city of Harar, where Rimbaud came in 1880 to start a trading company. That's a bit of a leap for a rebel poet, isn't it? The amazing fact about Rimbaud is that his poetry career lasted barely 4 years. Then, when his legend as a poet, one of the greatest in the French language, really took off, he took off too, at age 20, never to return, never to write poetry again. When Rimbaud first arrived here, aged 26, Harar had only just opened its gates to Westerners, having been a Muslim holy city for centuries. Inside, he found merchants and slave traders and their produce. He didn't stop being a nihilist in Africa, he just became a different kind of one. Je est un autre, I is another. It's grammatically strange, but that's how it's come down to us in translation. It's Rimbaud's most famous phrase. It meant it wasn't one self, but many selves. It's part of Rimbaud's mythology that disgust made him destroy his poetic self. But really, it was part of his poetic self to think that he could become someone else. Rimbaud lived and worked in Harar for long periods, 3 different times between 1880 and 1891, the year of his death. He was one of the first Frenchmen ever to set foot in this city. This place is called Rimbaud Rimbaud House. Rimbaud's letters describing his various homes make it difficult to know where any of them exactly were. Certainly Rimbaud, with its wide corridors and staircases, its cool shade and its grandness, fits an idea of where an important European ought to have lived. People make a literary pilgrimage out here. They can see books about him and by him downstairs, and his blurry self-portrait photos, still not yet 30, but gaunt and white-haired. There are mysterious invocations of Rimbaud everywhere, even on the floor. But one thing is absolutely certain, and that is that he never lived in this house, since it was built about 30 years after he died. In Paris, he had once lived above a squalid bar with a group of poets who called themselves the Zutists, after the expression zut, which means something even more futile than mad. But even they found him extreme when he masturbated in their drinks. Rimbaud became almost petit bourgeois in Harar. Why had he been such a beast in Paris? To be a poet is to be a seer, he said, and to be that, one must systematically derange all the senses, change the self, and so change existence. Challenge a false god by becoming a god yourself. He deranged himself with drugs and excess. He studied alchemy and the occult, and all that became inspiration for 100 years of artists and poets, and then intellectual rockers. This little bar off Harar's main square is built over a site where Rimbaud really did have a house for a while, in the early 1880s. Rimbaud was a miserabilist rather than actually miserable when he was out here. In fact, he was far more successful in Harar than his tragic myth would like. But he had a very misanthropic, fed-up outlook on everything in his conversations with Europeans, at least those ones that we know about, and especially in his letters home to his mother and sister. One particularly magnificently hateful one, considering that the Ethiopians respected him very much and he treated them with respect, goes like this. I'm so bored here. I don't think I've ever known anybody quite so bored. Stranded as I am amongst the Negroes, having to listen to their gibberish, eat their disgusting food, and be assailed all the time by their treachery, their idleness, and then wanting to exploit me and making my business always go slowly. And also living with the fear that I may become as stupid as them, stranded as I am, far from intelligent company. It's as if he was unable to actually get rid of the self that he'd wanted to dissociate from in his poetic days, but at least he'd come to acquire a grudging respect for his own unpleasant personality. Years before, as Rimbaud became the seer he desired to be, his poetic imagery became quite crazy and striking, very beautiful, seeming to come from nowhere. He invented a system of letters standing for colours, the alchemy of the word, he called it, summed up in a poem called simply Vows. A was black like flies,
E, white like glaciers. I, expectorated blood. U, viridian seas. O, the violet ray of the eyes of Jesus, who he didn't believe in. His first poem, in his fully developed visionary style, written when he was actually only 16, was The Drunken Boat. I drifted on a river I couldn't control, he wrote. I've seen what men only dreamed they saw. What he saw was rotting leviathans, thoughtful corpses, vast seas, flowing rivers. One image is savages on the Mississippi crucifying white settlers in a howling, yipping and yelping sadistic ritual. This heat is knocking me out. Excuse me while I take 40 winks. I hope I don't dream anything bad. It's the blasted jungle, and a dissociated self looking for something terrible. An apocalypse, probably. Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse Now. It's Hollywood saying, we know what you mean, mate, to Rambo's Drunken Boat, and to Jericho's The Raft of the Medusa. Up the river they went to the heart of darkness, where they found some respectable intellectual paperbacks in Marlon Brando's Hut, The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot, The Golden Bough by Frazier, Heart of Darkness by Conrad. Crikey, we all thought, must read more. Heart of Darkness, published 100 years ago this year, was the book Apocalypse Now was based on. The book starts on the civilized River Thames and ends in uncivilized jungle savagery. It's about a white man in Africa's total moral deterioration. Conrad wasn't a nihilist, but Apocalypse Now turns his book into a nihilist monument. It's another symptom of how attractive nihilism is to our age. What was that other paperback by Marlon Brando's bedside in his steamy hut? A Season in Hell, Rambo's autobiographical poem, where he recounts all his achievements. Laughing demonically, the cannibals all leaping and yelping. But now it's the white guy's turn, gone mad in the jungles of Vietnam, burning everything. Charlie don't surf, they reasoned, so let's kill them. Sorry, I zoned out. Amazing what goes on in the dream world. I think I've woken up now. Although I look a bit padded out still, like Marlon Brando, I'm actually back in the story of what happened when Rambo turned his back on Christian civilization.
Thank you.
Thank God for a cup of coffee.
It's groovy.
God was Allah in Harar. Rambo still didn't believe in him, but he did study the Quran. He didn't really connect with anybody here very closely, so he didn't have to nihilistically reject anyone or any higher power. He even taught the Quran occasionally. Meanwhile, Rambo's fame in Paris was growing. Rumours of him as a Kurtz-like figure began to spread. He'd become mad or a savage or the king of a tribe of Negroes or a slave trader. In fact, he never was any of these, but he had been an adventurer. He had been a gun runner, and he had travelled parts of the desert no one had ever been before. Ooh, my senses are deranged now. To get in touch with any nihilistic selves I might have missed out. This isn't dope, it's an aromatic thing they smoke out here while chewing a leaf called cat. It's legal, it doesn't quite derange you, just makes you a bit delighted with whatever happens. Which obviously is inappropriate for a programme about despair. Nihilists see existence as irrational and meaningless, but that gives them power over it. They feel they can change reality. They're not created by others, they can create themselves.
I want it all, mate. All of it.